The announcement hit like a thunderclap across America. Coca-Cola, the iconic brand that had been part of American culture for more than a century, declared it was pulling a massive portion of its operations out of the country, taking with it $160 million in investments and thousands of jobs. For many, it wasn't just shocking news, it was personal. Families who had relied on those paychecks, communities built around those bottling plants, and workers who had given decades of service suddenly faced an uncertain future. And at the center of it all, looming like a storm cloud, were Donald Trump's tariffs. It all started with a promise. Trump had vowed to put America first, to protect American workers by imposing steep tariffs on steel, aluminum, and imported goods. On paper, it sounded patriotic. To his supporters, it was a bold stand against foreign competition. But to companies like Coca-Cola, which relied on a vast global supply chain, it was a crushing blow. Costs began to rise: aluminum for cans, sugar for syrups, packaging materials, all became more expensive. The profits began to shrink, and hard decisions had to be made. Inside a Coca-Cola plant in Atlanta, workers gathered in the break room as the announcement was broadcast live on the news. Among them was Michael Turner, a line supervisor who had been with the company for 22 years. He sat in stunned silence, his calloused hands trembling slightly as the words sank in. Coca-Cola will be shifting production overseas due to unsustainable costs caused by U.S. tariffs. For Michael, Coca-Cola wasn't just a job. It was the place that had given him stability after his father passed away, the company that helped him put his daughter through college, the family that had carried him through the darkest moments of his life. Now, all of it was slipping away. He looked around at his coworkers, men and women, with tears in their eyes. Some whispering prayers, others shaking their heads in disbelief. In small towns across America, the ripple effects were immediate. Local diners that relied on plant workers saw empty booths. Small suppliers who shipped parts to Coca-Cola factories braced for closures. Communities that had Coca-Cola in their DNA suddenly felt abandoned. And though the headlines framed it as business for ordinary Americans, it was heartbreak. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump defended his tariffs with characteristic defiance. "We're bringing back American jobs," he declared at a rally. "We're making America strong." Again, but on the ground, reality painted a very different picture. The jobs weren't coming back, they were leaving. And the very people who had once cheered his promises were now left asking, at what cost? For Coca-Cola executives, the choice wasn't easy. They faced protests, angry letters, and broken trust from loyal consumers. But they argued that survival required sacrifice. "We are an international company," one executive explained. "And when policies make it impossible to operate competitively in one country, we have no choice but to look elsewhere." Michael's daughter, Emily, a recent college graduate, watched her father's spirit crumble in those days. She had grown up with Coca-Cola field trips to the factory, red and white Christmas trucks lighting up their town. To her, the brand was part of what made America, America. Seeing her father face unemployment after decades of loyalty broke her heart. But Emily refused to let despair win. "Dad," she told him one evening, "maybe this is the moment to fight, not just for your job, but for what's right." Inspired, Michael and a group of workers began organizing. They held community meetings, wrote letters to Congress, and spoke to local media. Their message was clear. Tariffs might sound patriotic, but when they drove companies away, it was the American worker who paid the price. Their movement gained traction, spreading beyond Coca-Cola to other industries. Farmers, manufacturers, small business owners, saw feeling the squeeze. In one emotional town hall, Michael stood before hundreds of neighbors and said, "I've Given my whole life to this company, and I've always been proud to see those red cans on shelves. But this isn't just about soda. This is about families, about dignity, about whether the promises made to us will ever match the reality we live in. We can't let politics destroy our livelihoods. The speech went viral. National news outlets picked it up. Soon, Michael found himself on morning shows and in newspapers, telling the story of ordinary Americans crushed under the weight of tariffs. His voice, trembling but resolute, put a human face on what had seemed like abstract economic policy. Coca-Cola's departure couldn't be reversed. It was too late for that. Plants closed and some jobs were gone for good. But the fight sparked something larger. Lawmakers from both parties began reconsidering the blanket tariffs. New policies were proposed to protect workers without pushing companies away. And across the nation, people realized that real patriotism wasn't about slogans, it was about listening to the struggles of ordinary families. For Michael, the road ahead wasn't easy. He eventually found work at a smaller beverage company, though. The pay wasn't the same. Still, he carried with him the pride of knowing he had turned his pain into purpose. Emily, inspired by her father's courage, went on to study public policy, determined to build a future where families wouldn't have to suffer the same fate. And as America debated its economic future, Coca-Cola's $160 million exit stood as a cautionary tale, a reminder that decisions made in Washington boardrooms and political rallies echo in the lives of millions. In the end, the story wasn't just about a company leaving America. It was about resilience, about ordinary people refusing to be silent, and about the power of community to turn heartbreak into hope. And for Michael, though the red Coca-Cola sign no longer lit up his hometown, he discovered something far more enduring: the strength of a voice that refused to be silenced.